We'll be good to go. All right, everyone, welcome to today's Agent Spotlight interview. As you know, here at Choice, we believe that the best way to learn is from one another to see what conversations we're having, how people are running their business, and how they're actively working towards their goals because we rise together, which is why we have these sessions. I know Brian said it yesterday, but out of all the training we have, which we have quite a bit of, these always tend to be our favorite because you always leave with something, right? And I'm sure today will be no different. Today, we're talking with our very own Allison Sanders. Allison, if you don't know, was one of the first agents to come over to Choice. She is someone who consistently sells between 10 and 15 million annually. She's been in Triangle Real Producers magazine 2 times now, a regular on the leaderboard. And whether you know it or not, she's actually one of the main reasons we have both the Choice Awards banquet and Family Fun Day. So she's a huge advocate for what we do here at Choice. When there is something that she thinks we can do to better our agent community, she brings that to us, which, as you know, we are all about, which makes us even more special each year. So, Allison, thank you for being here today. We appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me and thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, you guys know where I love to start these sessions. Obviously, I gave you a quick intro, but I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Well, you probably know me on the Monday calls as the one that talks a lot. Um, so when I heard that Brian was opening Choice, I was in this weird position of getting ready to change firms. So I've changed firms 5 times, and I was going to go back to Keller Williams for the third time. And I heard about Choice. And so I kind of just get a cold call. I don't cold call anybody, by the way. And I just said, "Hey, Brian, I want to hear what you're doing." And so that's what brought me to Choice. And I am forever grateful that I made that cold call.
And we're so glad that you did. You've been here the whole time. So, you guys know how I like to start these sessions. I think it's really important for us to give background. So, we're going to get into the everyday of your business. But before we do that, I always like to ask what got you into real estate? What were you doing beforehand? And what was that kind of final line in the sand where you officially made that transition? And what was your why?
Well, I had thought about real estate 3 times. I thought about it in my 20s in California. Should have done that then. And I didn't. I went and got a horticulture degree and did landscaping. We moved to North Carolina in '05, and I thought about real estate again. I actually enrolled in classes at HPW, and it was just a very, I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was the fit. And I think it had a lot to do with the instructor and it had a lot to do with the environment because it was just me and 2 other people. So it was very different than what I did for the third time. So I didn't do it the second time. I went to work for a local nursery in Cary because I was going to just do my landscaping again. And then when you have these things called kids, and all of a sudden college starts to get on the horizon, and you're looking at your accounts going, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" I thought about real estate for a third time. And it was really interesting. I was laying on the couch, I was somewhat stressed out, and I was reading a John Maxwell book. And there's a quote in his book, and I'm just going to sort of paraphrase it. I tried to see if I could find it, but I couldn't. And it says, "If you're not in control of your own destiny, you will be part of someone else's. And guess what they have in store for you? Not much." And it was a very pivotal quote because at that moment in time, I said, "Okay, I am feeling stressed out. I am worried about paying for my kids' college, and I'm worried about the direction we're going in our lives." And I said, "If anybody's going to do it, I'm going to do it." I have a saying that says, "If it will be, it's up to me." And so that's kind of what started me down the path of real estate for the third time.
I love that. And it's so true. I think, and I love bringing these up for so many reasons. But one, I think it's always important for us to remember our why. The day to day, things get stressful. We're bringing on new clients, not necessarily respecting our schedule, working all the time. And I think it's important for us to take a step back and say, gosh, at that time when I made that decision, there was so much that I wanted to do. And this is why I made that. And while we continue to evolve and we should continue to evolve, that's not to say we are now stuck here, right? But that reminder that I made this jump at some point, and if I need to make a jump or evolve my business again, I absolutely can. Or
Mhm.
I just need to recenter and remember this, and let's get back to the basics. The other reason I like to bring it up is because I think it's such a mirror to so many opportunities in our life where we get a gentle nudge and we start to listen to it, or maybe we explore it a little bit and then we go back to what we're doing and we get that nudge again. And before we know it, it's kind of a breadcrumb trail, and eventually it's loud enough where we take the leap and we take action and it changes our life. And I think that's just so important to remember where like you just have to listen, but action is required, and no one can do that action except for you. So props to you for taking control of your destiny because we're always in control of it. It truly is always up to us, and it's easy to forget that sometimes. So
And really it was about my kids. It was about helping secure their college. Unbeknownst to us, when I got my real estate license, several years into my business, our youngest son was diagnosed with autism. And that was something we were not preparing for. We knew he was kind of a quirky kid and we had had him tested for other things. But when we got that diagnosis, I was forever grateful to be doing what I'm doing because I put myself in a position to give him whatever he needed. And then the why became bigger than college. It became setting this child up to have every opportunity and to be able to succeed in whatever it is he wants to do.
and that's so beautiful. And I think that's why anytime we talk about goal setting, when we do the annual planning at the end of the year, or if you do any sort of coaching, we always talk about our why. And our why is never truly a production number. It's something so much bigger and it's
Right.
specific to each of us. But the more you can recognize that, the deeper it is. And
Yep.
that's what life is about, is finding your big
Yep.
why. I want to talk about internet leads. I know a lot of people call you about them. I know you started at KW, you went through Bold, you got a few deals, you started struggling a little bit. You got a few, but you never truly hit your momentum there. And so you ended up partnering with someone who introduced you to internet leads.
Mhm.
I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about them, but at first, I want us to talk about what did that look like? Like, how was that introduced to you? How did it change your business? And what were those initial best practices that you learned in working with those clients?
So I did a transaction with an agent, and he had a small boutique firm in Raleigh. And during some of our conversations, he said, "Hey, are you happy where you are?" And I said, "Well, I'm a new agent. Yes, I love the culture. I drank the Kool-Aid at Keller Williams, as they like to say, and I did." And he said, "Well, the reason I'm asking is because I have more leads than I know what to do with." And, if you started at a bigger firm like I did, their philosophies are go sit in a room and make phone calls. Call everybody you know. Go talk to your neighbors. Go knock on doors. Go do all of this. And I was completely out of my comfort zone. I tried it a few times and I just was like, I had sweaty palms and I felt like I was breaking out in hives. And when he said this to me, I said, "Okay, well, tell me a little bit more about that." And he said, "Well, let's get together," because he's a very face-to-face kind of guy. And so we did. And he introduced me to the world of buying leads. And it was just him and his wife and one other agent. And he was buying lots of leads. You hear this from people that have teams. That's how they feed their buyer's agents a lot of times. And he had lots of leads. And he kind of explained to me what that looked like. And I made the decision to move to his firm. And I was very lucky that I didn't have to spend any money. I just had to pay a bigger split to him on the leads that he gave me. But he trained me, and everything I do today is still what he told me to do every time a lead comes in. And we were also really lucky in the beginning because he would do the pre-screening and then he would say, "Hey, I'm going to put you in touch with my expert in Carrie." And then he would do the introduction and he had already made that first cold call, and then I would just take them and run.
And I know obviously he did a lot of the pre-screening, but I'm curious if he ever shared with you what that pre-screening entailed. Like, what was that
Oh yeah,
conversation he was having with
he gave
people?
us the scripts, he gave us the emails, he gave us, the all the wording that he did. And you know, and I just still really practice everything that he taught me. It's like, "Hey, thank you for reaching out." And let me see if I can like do this specifically. "Thank you so much for contacting me about this property. Do you have time for a quick call? Would you be available at 10 or would you be available at 2?" And literally it's just as simple as that.
Yeah, a few things to note with internet leads. Obviously, in some ways, they're easier to get the first appointment for, right? In terms of converting them, we'll talk about that. That can be a little more
Right.
difficult, but they are nice in the way of like, if we're talking about Realtor, we're talking about Zillow, we're not talking about Bold Trail, right? Like, we're not talking about Facebook leads, but something specific where they are looking at a property, they're clicking, I'm interested. They know someone will
They're
be reaching
raising their
out.
hand.
Right. So they know to expect that call, and that definitely helps. Whether we're talking about internet leads or not, though, regardless, when we're booking an appointment, it's so important for us to provide exclusivity, right? And like give two options for appointment times because we're so fast to say, I'm available anytime, like on this day. And unfortunately, like busy equals productive and successful, and that's what people assume. And so if we can kind of not be available all the time and pick the appointments that work best for us, then we train them to know that we're not always going to be available all the time for them. And it provides them, it narrows down the plethora of like options for them, right? Sometimes options can be a little intimidating. I want to circle back real quick though, because I have to do a shameless plug, which is, as you know, at Choice, we don't really recruit. And he did something very special of saying, hey, this agent is great to work with. And he said, as a co-op, like, are you happy with where you are? Just a reminder that when we work with a good agent, we know it, you know? And so as you have those conversations, if there's someone that you enjoy working with, don't be afraid to kind of make that ask and see if they're interested because we love growing our community in a natural way. So anyway, just had to say that.
Well,
But the last
I think any agent, if somebody says, especially if you're a new agent, if somebody says, I have more leads than I can handle, then you kind of go, well, how are you getting your leads? And you're asking me to help you? All right, let's talk about it.
I also think I love that he said, I'll connect you with the expert in this area. Now, granted, it's someone else saying that, but I think we're so fast to not assume that we're an expert. Step into your power. You know, people love to know that we specialize in this given area. So don't be afraid of that. I want to dive deeper into internet leads. I know they get a bad rep, right? They can be expensive. It's hard for individual agents to do them, but they are how a lot of big teams do it. They are an incredible way to grow your database. That's how I built my business for 3 years. And so, regardless of whether it's something you're curious about or whether you're not at all, the concepts apply in terms of the conversations you're having and how you convert. Because regardless, no matter how we get our leads, we're building relationships, right? So let's say, fast forward to now, obviously the scripts are pretty much the same, but just to reiterate, what does that look like in your day-to-day business now, right? Like you get a lead, they click that they're interested, it comes to you. What does that first conversation look like? First of all, does it ring to you and you answer? Or what is that first conversation? What's your script for that?
So they come via text or email. And if I'm in a position if it comes in through text, I call them right away. Now, I'm a busy girl and I drive a lot. So sometimes I can't always call them right away. But that's usually the first thing. And a lot of the people that I end up closing, they'll say, Allison, you were so fast to get back to me right away. Because as I think I said, because I listened to Warren's Spotlight and some of the leads that you get in, there's two different types that Realtor.com has. And one of them is you're competing with other agents. And it used to be that you were competing with two to three. Now you're competing with eight or more. And so if you're not the first person to call them, if it's one of that type of lead, then you're just essentially dead in the water. So if the lead comes in, and I know some of the zip codes that I'm in, I know what kind of leads I have there. So if I get the lead, I have to literally call them right away. If they don't answer, then I follow it up with a text message and just say, and it's super casual. Hey, I see you're reaching out about 102 Main Street. Let me know if you want to see the property. And I'll just leave it at that.
If you're the one that calls them first, does it automatically block the rest of the agents, or is everyone else also
Nope.
texting them?
Nope.
Whew.
Yeah. And I have a client I sold actually a house to in Pinehurst. I can remember it plain as day. I was sitting on the couch. The lead came in, and usually I don't call people at night if they come in. And I just happened to call him, and he goes, well, and he said to me, and his phone, as we were talking, he says his phone was blowing up. And he said, and you were the first, so I'm going to go with you.
They always say the phrase, which I know sounds a little silly, but it's catchy and it makes you remember it, which is speed to lead. But especially with internet leads, like that really
Absolutely.
matters. That's how you're going to get them. So how fast do you try to set that appointment? Obviously, you're answering as quickly as possible, but how fast of a turnaround do you try to make? It's a delicate dance between being like a Pop-Tart agent and like always being on call for someone, but also knowing that everyone else was going to hit them up. How often, like, what's that turnaround time in terms of getting in front of them? And are there any qualifiers you use of seeing if they're qualified or I don't know. Is there anything you're doing to screen them before meeting them, or are you just trying to get in front of them?
Honestly, I'm just trying to get in front of them. You can usually kind of tell by that first conversation who they are. And I didn't have forewarned for years, and so I could just tell if I felt comfortable or if they start talking about a spouse or they start talking about their children, then I kind of know that we're going to be okay. Especially if they have a spouse. If it's a man and then he's going to bring his wife, then I always feel way more comfortable than if it's just a single man. If it's a single person, chances are somebody's coming with me on their first meeting.
And so are there any situations where you worry that they won't show up? And is there anything you do to kind of increase the chances? Because we'll talk about this later, but you're driving from a good ways, probably, if it's a lead, depending on where they are. Are you at all concerned that they won't show up? And is there anything you do to increase that likelihood?
So have I been stood up? Absolutely. I have been stood up. So here's the philosophy that I've sort of accepted and grown to have over the time of doing this is I'm going to work with the people that I'm supposed to. There's a lot of garbage that comes in with these, and they all are raising their hand, and I can't tell you how many times I get stop because it goes into KV Core, and then there's some automatic stuff that goes on in addition to me reaching out to them. And you just have to understand that it's okay if you get stood up. It's okay if they say stop. It's okay if they get rude to you because, again, I'm going to work with the people I'm supposed to work with. And the ones that I do end up closing are clients for life. So I don't really do a whole lot of pre-screening because I have tried the pre-screening and then sometimes you can scare them away. I at least want to have a phone call and hear their voice. Just even if it's to say, "Hey, are you still good for 10:30 tomorrow?" "Yep, we're good. I look forward to meeting you." "Okay, I'll be in the white Lexus." And I just tell them who I am. But otherwise, I get there and then I kind of can gauge how it's going to be. I've shown up at houses where I open up the front door, I open up the back door, and I'm not a gun carrier, but I'll have a sharp object in my hand in case I need to make a quick exit. I mean, I'll be honest with you, this is not for the faint of heart, but I have done that, and I have done that waiting for people and they've never showed up. And you just have to understand that that's just kind of part of what this is about.
Yeah. Trusting your gut is always so important.
Trusting your gut.
If you know anything about me, you know that's what I will always orient
Yep.
to is your intuition is wise. And that is also why we have forewarned. We will shout it from the mountaintops, especially from a brokerage level. Please, please, please do what is safe for you.
But
Um,
I only started using Forewarn literally like a few weeks ago.
do it for everyone. Do it for everyone.
I know. Oh, I do. Yeah, you're not supposed to do it for your friends, but I've done it for my friends too.
So, in terms of conversion, right, getting in front of them can sometimes be the easiest part. Seeing them a second time is not always the easiest part. So, what do you bring with you to that appointment? And this is great for internet leads, obviously, but for any client. And then, what are you doing to set that appointment? Are you trying to set that second appointment when you're with them? Is that second appointment a buyer consultation formally? Tell us about your process. What's in your folder?
So, based on sort of the communication that I've had before I get there, is whether or not I'm going to bring a folder with me. Now, most of the time, I do bring a choice folder. And in there, I have the sample copy of everything we're supposed to give them as spelled out on the buyer agency agreement. I give them a comp sheet. Sometimes I print out the disclosures depending on who it is and kind of what I can gauge from them. Because the whole purpose of this is to get in front of them and bring value to the table. And if I'm coming from a place of contribution and I'm coming from a place of professionalism and bringing them information, even though I'm not the listing agent, because they all think that I am, then I'm proving to them that, hey, I am someone that might be worth working with. And there's been several, so the people that do these leads that click on information, they've done it with more than one agent. I can just tell you that. Most of them have. And the one thing that I hear from most of my clients is, Allison, nobody's ever done what you do. Nobody's ever brought me a folder with information and just whipped out the offer to purchase and contract and talked to them quickly about terms. And I've done things differently now since the lawsuit, but I always would come from a place of bringing them information. And I always probably bring more information. Sometimes I see people sort of gloss over when I'm actually giving them too much information, which just that's kind of through my who I am. I do that. I tend to overwhelm people sometimes. But that is the number one thing. And I think that's what sets up my lead conversion for how I can convert leads to what other people do. You know, some agents just have great personalities, but if you're also coming from a place of contribution and you're bringing them value, that you're trying to educate them on the neighborhood, the house, how to buy a house, all of that, that is the key.
Yeah, our value is not in opening doors. And so sitting down at the dining room table and having a
Right.
mini buyer consult, or I
Right.
think it depends on their timeline, right? Like if we know that they've got a long timeline, maybe we're dropping a few nuggets and then booking, like a formal buyer consult or just going through all of it. And if, at least in my opinion, anytime I would do an internet lead, if I could tell they weren't interested in the house that we were in, as I was going through the consult, I would always make sure, especially the disclosures, I'd make sure to point out things in the home that I would bring up to them because we're talking about when we make an offer, we want to make sure we're considering the condition of the home as it's in versus relying on negotiating during inspections. And so if it was this house, then this is what we would do. And I think that also builds a lot of trust because then they can see, oh, this person isn't here to just sell me any house, especially this one. Like they're here to advocate for me. So education is key. That's really where we're going to provide our best value.
And just to add to that, if I go up in an attic, if I go into a crawl space, that flips the whole switch in a minute because all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I've never seen an agent do that. And I mean, and that is so true. You know, I mean, maybe that's my landscape background, bugs and dirt and snakes and all that stuff doesn't bother me. So I just go right in. And especially if you're showing like a distressed property, it's so funny because if you open a door and walk right into a room that's going to scare most people, they just have like a total different respect for you.
Absolutely. All right, you talk about it on the weekend wrap-up calls a lot, but as a reminder, or if someone isn't used to being able to attend those, I would love for you to talk about how you get people to sign your showing agreement before the appointment. What is that script? Is it a non-exclusive agency? Is it exclusive? Just how do you do that? And are you doing it digitally before the appointment, or are you just showing up with it and making sure that they sign it on the front porch?
So when the rules first changed, I would do everything electronically. And, you know, people that knew about the lawsuit, it was still top of mind. For most people today, it is not top of mind. You can mention the lawsuit and people are like, what lawsuit? But when it first happened, and if you know anything about me, I value my license and I'm scared to death of the real estate commission. And so I want to make sure that I'm doing everything correctly. And I would be like, listen, in order for me to show you this house, I need you to sign two documents. I'd send over the working real estate agent's brochure and I would send over the non-exclusive. And I would do it specifically for that property. So then there's no pressure. I'm a very low pressure sale. There's no pressure. They don't feel like they're being roped into me for any period of time. You reiterate the fact that it says non-exclusive, even though there's commission amounts on there. And that's how I would do it in the beginning. I have now strayed towards the showing agency agreement, and I use the showing agency agreement now all the time. And for probably the last six leads that I've had come in that I've met, I've just had them sign it at the house.
Yeah.
Brian, close your
Because
ears.
I mean, to your point, there are certain things that can really scare people away. And even if it's, something that every agent is going to have to do, the more communication, the more hoops they have to jump through, kind of the less likely they are. And so, I mean, as long as we're doing it before we kind of step foot in that property, That's what we need to do.
Well,
So
usually as I'm opening the door, we're all standing at the door. We've done our introductions in the driveway, and I just say, hey, once we get in, I just need you to sign the showing agreement, just so that way I can stay compliant with the rules, is what I say. Because if you put it in that kind of context, it takes you out of it and it puts it into this professional setting that I have to have this in order to stay compliant.
one thing before we kind of move on, Cindy had put in the chat, what are your thoughts on safety when checking out an attic? I'm going to add or a basement with a stranger. My thought is like trust your gut. I feel like before you're heading into any of those spaces, you would have had kind of a vibe check and be like, we're wrapping this up quickly. But what are your thoughts, Allison?
Well, usually it's done at the end. And depending on how the conversations go in the kitchen when we're looking at the folder or if we're walking around, there's that one rule where you always have them go in front of you, right? I use very old-fashioned service. I open doors for people. They love that. And by opening that door and asking them to step through first, it changes the vibe because then you're again coming as the professional. You're not there just showing them around. You're saying, hey, I'm inviting you to take a look at this house, and then I'm going to share the details. I have a tagline that I use with all my clients is it's your job to find what you're going to like, and it's my job to find what you're not going to like. And so, in doing so, they take the lead. They're in front of me, and then I'm commenting on the broken windowsills or the crack over the door while they're looking at the countertops and that kind of thing. And then at that point, I can kind of gauge how they're reacting to me and how we're going to proceed through the rest of the house. I mean, I'll be honest, there's some of them where I'm like, we're done, we're out, and we're leaving, and I'm not doing anything more, and then there's others when, especially if it's the younger generation, it's like I say, well, hey, do you like this house? And they say, actually, we do like this house. And I said, well, then let's pull down the attic. And I pull it down. And then they start looking at me kind of funny. And then if they're young engineers, which I work a lot with, they're going up there before I am. And if they've already gone up and taken a look around in the attic, then we're already on a totally different page. And then I'll oftentimes go up there and take a quick peek.
I love that script. It's their job to find what they love. It's your job to find what they won't love. That's a
Yeah.
good one. All right, let's talk about what happens after the appointment in terms of workflow. So they've wrapped it up. We're going to assume they're not making an offer on that house because that's kind of rare. But let's say, we finished up, we are now leaving. We've set some sort of expectation on what's going to happen next. What is that expectation that you're setting as we're leaving? And what is your process? Are you setting them up on a search through MLS or through Bold Trail? Are you scheduling a formal buyer's consult? What is next for them?
Well, sometimes I'll say, "Hey, do you like this house?" And if they say, I don't really think it's the one for us," I pull up the Home Spotter app and I go, "Well, look, there's one right around the corner. What do you think of this one?" And then they'll scroll through the photos, and if I can get him into a second house after that one showing, that again changes the whole relationship. And so if I do have that opportunity, if I have the time, if I'm not too scheduled, I try to see what else is in the neighborhood while we're there. Because oftentimes, if people go to see one, they want to see another. And I've had people leave me and go see another agent to see another property. So I try to do that. I try just to see, hey, look, let's just see what else is right there. I happen to have some time. Let's just go see if we can get in. Oh, it's vacant. Let's go look. If not, the questions that I ask are, how are you searching? And they say, well, I go, are you just searching on Zillow? Are you just searching on Realtor.com? And then they say, yes. And I say, well, the MLS is what feeds all of those sites. The MLS is the multiple listing service, and that's what agents work out of. The MLS is going to be the most accurate source of information on all houses available in the area. I said, I'm happy if you're willing to, if you want to look on Zillow and Realtor.com and send me properties, I'm fine with that. Or I can also set you up on a search through the MLS, which is just going to be a more accurate source of information. And when you approach it that way, 9 times out of 10, they're like, absolutely. Absolutely, I want you to set up on a search. And then I say, great. And then I verify all their information because oftentimes their information is false, mainly their emails. And so then I say, great. And then we go back and I set them up on a search. And then the next day, or usually I send them a text, said, hey, I just set up the search. Just want to let you know. And they say, thank you. Also, just to back up, after we leave, I always send them a thank you text. Thank you so much for your time. It was great to meet you. And I always have this funny tagline. I say, listen, if I never see you again, I wish you all the best. Because again, you're taking that pressure off and you're making them say, hey, she's really just giving us information. She doesn't really want the hard sell because that is not me. That is not my style at all. So if I can set them up on a search, I do. I send them a thank you text message. Thank you for your time. And sometimes I never hear from them, whatever. And sometimes I hear from them a week later. You have to understand that too. And then if I do set them up on the search, then I always check in with them in 3 days. Hey, how's the search going? I did it really broad when I set it up. If you want me to change anything about the parameters, let me know.
Yeah, just inviting opportunities for
That's
feedback
right.
and being a human about it. I love what you said about pulling up home spotter and finding another home. That was something I always tried to do for open houses, was especially as I'm showing up as a buyer's agent, because I rarely ever did an open house for my own listing, is
Right.
I would see based on the criteria of the listing that I'm doing an open house at, are there any other homes in that neighborhood or under 5 minute drive that would match a similar criteria, and just going ahead and booking a showing or two. And
Mhm.
just that way, if someone is interested, but this isn't the house for them, it's very easy for us to say, well, hey, like if this one isn't the one, I understand I'm here to work for you.
Right.
Let's check out the one down the street. And worst case, you just give me your feedback on that one. We're getting to know each other. I'd love to hear your preferences and what excites you, you know.
Again, just come from contribution. I can't stress that enough, because so many agents don't. I mean, I'll be honest with you. And you know what? And if you really start to hear how other agents treat people, it's not that hard to beat them. I mean, I'm in a new market right now, and I have figured out that it's really not that hard to beat the agents down here.
Yeah, curiosity. It's
Yes.
beautiful. So let's talk about nurturing. We've got a great step in that direction as we're starting to work with them. I think people have kind of a misunderstanding of internet leads, which is where they get the most defeated in thinking that because someone has said, I'm interested in this property, that they're going to buy a house at least in that month, if not that exact house. And that is not the case. Sometimes 5%, it's happened a few times, but it's very rare. As with anything, it is a relationship. It's going to take a minute to find the right one. And so, what are you doing to nurture people, especially when maybe their timeline is a little bit longer? If they, we're just getting started, how are you checking in with people? What are those conversations? And what advice would you give agents that are considering working with internet leads?
So if I've gotten in front of them and we've actually seen a house, I turn off the drip campaigns because if they come into KV Core, they automatically go into a drip campaign. And I turn it off, and the only emails they get from me are houses. They only get the search results. And then every couple weeks, I just check in. If I don't hear from them, hey, is search going okay? Or I go in and look at their search, and then I'll send them a specific house. I'll be like, hey, listen, did you see this one? I just wanted, I was in this neighborhood today showing this house, and I thought of you. I just wanted to send this over and see if it's something that you might want to see. And so it's a very gentle touch with those clients that I've seen. The ones that I haven't seen go into KV Core, they stay on the campaigns, and then you can see if they're clicking on properties, and some of them unsubscribe, some of them I just delete. But the ones that are actively looking, then every now and then, because they will have already gotten at least one or two text messages from me personally, in addition to what they're getting from KV Core, every now and then I might just say, hey, listen, I see you've been searching on my website. I just wanted to see if you had any questions about that house. And sometimes I hear from him and sometimes I don't. And I've even had people that I didn't even touch, I didn't even talk to. And next thing you know, they raised their hand because they were on a search and they said, hey, you've been sending me these houses. Will you show me this house today? And I say, sure, I will. Could you have time for a quick call?
I want to do two things. One, I want to point back to the conversation we had yesterday in the AI session, which is obviously KV Core or Bull Trail has a
Oh,
number of
sorry.
drip campaigns. Oh my gosh, no, they have a number of drip campaigns that you can automatically turn on, and they are great. And I would be curious, what prompts you could use or what the output would be if you went into something like ChatGPT and said, "Hey, I am a real estate agent in this area. I am working internet leads. Can you help me write a drip campaign of 8 emails that help me build a relationship with clients, specifically design this one for the people that have requested an appointment and I never connected with, or the opposite, that I've connected once with and haven't connected with since, right? And just see what it comes up with to see if it might be able to personalize it a little bit more. The other thing that I wanted to mention is something you said. I think it's really important when we're sending those properties kind of a one-off. Obviously, they're going to be getting the automatic e-alerts for given properties, but as we're hand selecting ones to send to them, I think it's really important for us to point back to feedback they've given before. And it
Mhm.
reminds them that we're listening and saying, "Hey, I saw this house for you. It's in the area we discussed. It's got 3 bedrooms and one bonus. I think that could really work based on our conversation. I will say it doesn't have a fenced-in yard, so that would be something that we'd have to work on, right? We're reminding them that they said they needed a fence. Like those little things where we make sure they know that not only were we listening, but they were heard, I think is really important. And those little touches can convert a lot as well. So, all right, last thing on lead generation. Do you do anything else? I think this will kind of lead into our next point of topic, but is that all that you do? Do you host open houses? What else is on your radar?
Well, this is where I call myself the lazy real estate agent. So I really don't, to be honest with you. I don't have a newsletter. I'm not a huge open house fan. I do them for my own listings because I think I did so many open houses when I first got into the business, and I had one closing from all of the open houses that I did, and that's a lot of time out of my day. And then when I started to get busy, for me to go sit and do an open house for 3 hours when I could be out showing houses to clients, it just became a priority thing. So where is my time best used? And so the open houses sort of went by the wayside, and now I really only do them for um, my own listings. The only thing that I do is I send out this to my clients once a month. It's that magazine, and this is the small one. This is not the big one that goes out more. Brian's used the bigger one. I use this. And everybody that goes into my database that's closed gets a flyer, gets one of these little magazines from me every month. And I don't know if they just put it into the circular or what, but it's just so they see my face and they see my contact and they say, Allison's still there. Because that's one of the things I always tell my clients at closing is, listen, just because we're closed doesn't mean I'm going anywhere. I will always be here for you, even if it's just a question about a plant, right? Because I have a landscape background. And so, if you're in the nursery and you're wondering what's going to go in the corner of your house, text me. I just make myself available for them. And that's what I've always done. Again, that boutique firm is the one that told me about this when I first started doing the internet leads. He's the one that told me about this, and I've been doing it ever since.
And just for those that can't see or maybe couldn't see as
Oh,
clearly, what is the name of that magazine? LHY or?
yeah, this is the Your Home and Lifestyle magazine. And this is the newest one that just came out. And then you just open it up, and there's usually a recipe, and then there's some tips. And some people can get their lender or their inspectors to advertise back here and help pay for this with you. I did that in the beginning. The issue for me is that I'm not free or as free to go work with other people. And so I just figured this is going to be just me. I'm not going to share it with anybody. I'll take on the cost. And I do, every time I have a closing, I try to go in there and amend my client list. And because it takes a couple months for it to get going. But every client that I have ever closed gets that magazine every month.
And I have a few questions about it. One, what is the cost per magazine, if you don't mind sharing? And is it monthly or every other month?
I don't remember the cost per magazine, but it's not that much. I mean, I think I'm up to like 250 bucks a month. And I probably have consistently in there only honestly like 130, 140 people.
I know some of the other ones, they will make sure it doesn't say what month it went out. It'll say like volume 8 or something, which creates longevity. Do you know what yours says on the front of it? And is there any, some of them will allow you to like write a personal note or
But
promote
you
something.
can. You can absolutely, you can change this in the back. You can change what you put here. You can change this opening right here. You can customize all of it. But I mean, it's not, I mean, yeah, like I said, I haven't really gotten close to $300 a month because people move, and then I don't always get their addresses or, some people I just don't want to work with again. And so I'm not putting them in there. That rarely happens. But I mean, let's be honest, right? I mean, that's what I think some agents don't do is they're not completely honest, which that is something I am. So, so I could go in and look in my spreadsheet real quick and tell you what I spent on it last month.
Yeah, we can
I
send
think it's
that
only
in the
like
follow-up.
$263.
Yeah, I think the other thing to note is for that little intern, it's almost like a letter from the editor, like on the front inside cover. That's a great way if you don't want to be doing postcards or things like that. You can, let's say you want to invite your clients to the extravaganza event, right? Like those are simple ways you can tweak it so that they know, oh my gosh, this wasn't just auto-populated
Yeah.
by this magazine company. But if you don't have time to do that, you can easily just keep it the same. Like it is a very low maintenance,
Because I
consistent.
don't. I don't. I did in the beginning, but I just don't. I just send this. And it's funny because my and my brother both get them because they're also clients of mine. And my dad always has something really nice to say, of course, because he's my dad. But the point is that he sees it. And if he's seeing it, then they all are.
Yeah. I'm going to move topics in just a second, but I do want to hit on texts to your people.
Yeah.
And first of all, let's back up for a second. I know in this conversation you started by saying this is where you call yourself the lazy agent. That is your words. Everything you
It
do is
is.
very intentional, right? And so obviously your client database has grown dramatically. So the frequency of texts like this to check in with people is not quite as consistent in terms of like holidays and stuff. But will you just talk about how you stay connected with your past clients and what that looks like?
So when I first got into the business, I used to go to every panel discussion there is, and I still try to get to as many of those as possible. Because if I can learn from agents that are doing more volume than me, or even the same volume for me, I'm all about that. That's why I love Choice so much, is because even if you just take one thing away from somebody else that you're listening to, just go and listen to them. And there was a really big agent that works in the Triangle, and she one time was saying that she, in the beginning of her business, used to text every single one of her clients happy holidays at Christmas. She would happy Mother's Day to the mothers, happy Father's Day to the fathers. And in the beginning, we used to drive to Georgia a lot. And so I would be captive in the car for several hours. And those road trips oftentimes surrounded a holiday, Easter, 4th of July. And I would sit there literally and go through my entire address book and text every single client. Happy Easter. Hope you're doing great. Happy 4th of July. Hope you're doing great. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. And it's so funny. I can't do that anymore because I just don't have these long road trips anymore to do it. And if I do it today, it takes me a long time. That's why it was great to do it on the road trips. But it was so funny when I stopped doing it as much, my clients were texting me. And it was so cute because they were so used to hearing from me at the holiday and they were like, well, Allison didn't text me. And now they text me. And I mean, I think that says it all.
Yeah, you're training your people. But on that note as well, if there is one thing to take away, it's been a while since I've said it, so I will preach it from the mountaintops. But we all are intuitive. We all kind of have a heart that's connected to one another. I always say, at a minimum, like you don't need to be texting everyone, but if you think of someone randomly and you haven't thought of
Right.
them in a while, there's a reason. Just send them a text. It could be as simple as saying like, "Hey, you've been on my mind today. Just wanted to reach out. Like I don't know why, but I figured there was a reason. Hope you're doing well." And 9 times out of 10, either they've been thinking about you as well, or something kind of big is happening in their life. And so it doesn't need to be everything. It just needs to be those intentional, personal, like humanized touches. So
And every time I'm in a neighborhood that I've sold a house, I will text the person that lives in that neighborhood every single time. Hey, guess what? I'm right around the corner. Hope you're doing great. I'm showing this house. Can you believe what this price is? And then they just love it.
Yeah, which I think leads perfectly into where I want to finish this conversation, which is about mindset. I know you and I are very similar in that regard in terms of what we put out comes back to us, and we're going to work with the people we're meant to work with. I would love for us to talk about mindset. I want to start with some things that are pretty tangible. We always preach running your business like a business, and a huge part of that is knowing your numbers. That's something that you are really strong at. I would love to know what are the numbers you always know about yourself? Are we talking about appointments to contracts, um, knowing your strongest lead source, what are those, and what motivates you in your business?
So I'm a big reader. I like to read books. I like to read about, like Tony Robbins is a big one. Ninja Selling was a great book. Anything, The Go-Giver, those types of books. And all of those books are write things down. Write things down because it's something different when you physically write down what your goals are going to be. This is why Bill Middleton is so big on your goal setting. The numbers that I know is I know where I want my sales to be at the end of the year. I know roughly what my transaction number is going to be. And I used to break that down and do what Bill teaches you to do. And I used to get so bogged down with anxiety because, oh my God, I don't have 5 appointments this week. I don't have 3 listing appointments this week. And I have a folder thing that I keep all my folders in on my desk. And as long as it's full, I'm happy. And if I close some buyers, I always say to myself, okay, I need some new buyers. I like to keep 5 buyers at all times. And then as long as my thing is full, 'cause right now I'm getting listing heavy, so I have more green folders than I do blue folders. But as long as this is full, then I feel like I'm doing pretty well. And then I don't necessarily have to focus on, oh, I need to go out and get one more appointment this week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. And sometimes numbers are great, but if that's not how you operate, like meet yourself where you are, don't beat
Right.
yourself up. Um, I was going to ask, how do you set those numbers? So maybe let's talk about on an annual basis. How do you set where you want to aim? Obviously, you've got a big why, which I'm sure plays a role in that, but tell us how you get there.
So first of all, remember these old notebooks? If any parent here knows what these notebooks are. So I used to have a ton of these left over from my kids when they stopped going to school, when they were finished, when they graduated from high school. And I use these, and this is what I write all my goals down in. And I am on my second one, and I look at it every single day. Well, almost every day. And that's one of the things like Ninja Selling tells you, look at your goals every single day. Because unless you know where you're going, you don't, if you know where you're going, you just kind of, it's like when you ride a horse and you look that direction, the horse just kind of goes that direction. You have to know where you're going. And then I look at my numbers every day. This year I want to sell 10 million. This year I want to sell 15 million. I have all my sales listed on my wall. So I look every day at where I've been and where I want to go. So that way my mental brain is telling me that's what you're shooting for. And I look at my numbers every single day. I know how many transactions I have under contract. I know how many more transactions I'm going to need to finish out this half of the year. I always do a mid-year check-in, always. Okay, it's July. How many have I closed? Where are my numbers? What's under contract? And who's in the pipeline? And so I just know that I'm heading in the right direction. And then there's some years, guys, where I'm like, I don't even know what is going to happen. This year was one of them. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen this year, but I still set my goals and I still look at it every day and I still know that I want my folder thing full.
And it doesn't matter what it is. I think Sweet Assist and CRMs, Bold Trail, things like that are really important. And it's great to have kind of a system like that. And at the same time, it can be just as valuable to have a little thread on your wall where you've got like 20 cutouts of houses, and after each closing, you slide one over. Or my process was always to have a printout of like an 8 by 11 sheet of paper where I had like 8 boxes and that was it. It was like a Word document that I would print, and I'd do a slash anytime I had an appointment, put the date, their name, and the source. after they went under contract, I'd color half of it. After they closed, I'd color the other half. And so at any given time, I could flip through those and say, oh gosh, like I need some closings. I met with this person and we haven't met in a while. Or
Mhm.
it's just nice to have a visual representation, like you said.
Right.
Let's talk about something that isn't quite as tangible, feels a little more whimsical, but is just as important. Our thoughts create our reality. Let's talk about affirmations. Affirmations play a big role in your business. What are those for you? When are you doing them in your day? Tell us about those.
I have another Marvel compensation book of all my affirmations. So one of the books that I read in the very beginning of my career, and I wish I would have had a copy to show you, but I've given that book away so many times, is The Miracle Morning. And I highly encourage you to read The Miracle Morning. It literally changed my life along with that John Maxwell book. And it's all about savers. There's this thing called savers, and you do it every single morning where you read, you do your affirmations, you visualize where you want to go, and you sit quietly. And every morning and it talks about getting up at 5:30, and I used to get up at 5:30. I don't get up at 5:30 anymore, but I get up every morning and I still go through the motions of the miracle morning. And that's when I say my affirmations mostly. And then I walk almost every day and I say my affirmations when I walk. And that could be whatever it wants. Like right now, I want to sell $10 million houses in a year. That's one of my goals. And I'll get there someday. But that's what I say to myself every morning while I'm walking. I'm going to sell 10 $1 million houses.
And anytime you read those types of books, it's like it's not just about the affirmations, but it's about training your nervous system to know that
That's
it's
right.
possible.
That's right.
Because so often what we think our limit is simply what we've witnessed normally in our immediate circle, like our family or our close friends. And if we've never seen someone do, aside from like some people on Instagram, we've never seen it be possible for possibly ourselves, then it seems out of reach on a body level. And so, like visualizing ourselves there and just repeatedly training it, then your body isn't shutting down because its
Right.
goal is to keep us safe, and that big thing is scary. So on a nervous system level, it's blocking it to keep us safe. And so if we can just train it that that's actually like we are safe here, then we're one step closer.
Well, and we are the thoughts we tell ourselves every day, and so this business will wear you down, and been a very tough market the last couple years, and who knows what's going to happen if the rates ever do come down, especially with the new rules. So that's why Brian's so great at training us, on how to approach these rule changes and our conversations that we're having, especially with our buyers. And so and unless you can keep your mindset focused on the bigger picture, it's very easy to get bogged down by the small details. And I am the first one that will get bogged down by the small details when I've been told no by 5 different internet leads. And then I went and tried to meet a first-time home buyer when I was all excited, and then he stood me up and never even bothered to get back to me. But then things like what happened to me this morning, I got a text message from a client that I haven't talked to since 2022, and he just gave me a referral. So in order to keep your mindset going, you have to tell yourself every day that it's okay. I'm going to get there. I'm still going to sell a house someday. It's not like I'm never going to sell a house again. And you just know that all of that nurturing that you've done for your clients, whether it's lazy or not, will pay off and they will come back to you in the end.
Yeah, and exactly what you said, you're going to work with who you're meant to work with. And that leads exactly where I was headed with the next one, which you pretty much hit on. But how do you stay motivated when you hit a slow moment, or how do you stay grounded when you're busy? Gardening is big for you. Will you speak to that?
Oh, yeah. So that's my safe place. So if I, feel stressed, and I've had some back issues, and I have some now I know I have real back issues. So that sort of changed things. But the biggest thing I used to be able to do is just grab my shovel, or now I go out with my weeder, and you're sitting in nature. First of all, it's grounding, like physically grounding, and then being in nature, you remember what's important. Never lose sight of what's important. And in at the end of the day, it's your family, it's your spirituality, whether what that looks like for you, and doing what makes you truly happy. Real estate makes me happy, but it also makes me very stressed. And so when I get too bogged down, the number one thing that I can do is go get dirty in the garden or take
Go
a walk
find
and do my affirmations.
Yeah, go find your happy. It'll attract what you need.
Yeah.
I've got a few more questions for you, but as we wrap up, I would love if anyone has any questions that we're hoping for us to hit on, or if our conversation has sparked something that you feel we've missed, go ahead and pop it in the chat. I'll circle back to it in just a minute, or go ahead and do the hand raise icon. We'll probably have time for one or two questions here right at the end. Um, my last statement that I wanted to make is speaking of mindset, I think community is really important in this business. It's so easy to feel isolated, and we're meant to do things together. We're not meant to do it alone. But when you have a million other things going on, making intentional time to spend with other people can feel like one more thing to do. But you're someone that has been really intentional with finding your community here at Choice. You know, with so many agents, it can be easy to be like, I don't even know anyone, right? Like sometimes show up to the things that are in person, get to know one another, but also reach out to people and go to lunch with them or kind of form a mastermind of your own. What advice would you give to people who are feeling isolated?
Just show up. I mean, go to the coffees with Brian. I live, I don't know if most of you know, but I live down in near Pinehurst. And so I'm in Moore County, and that's an hour and a half from the office. And I still work up there, so I drive up there all the time. But I still try to show up to as much as I can. And, I want to start going to more stuff because I feel like I don't know half the agents anymore. I was lucky when I started with Choice, there's a group that we kind of did week or monthly masterminds, and we still get together, not as much on a regular basis just because our lives are sort of going in different directions. But, you know, just show up, just go to every training that you can get, go to every social event. I'm a big social person. I'm really not a big drinker, but everybody sort of thinks I am. But because I just show up and I have a drink and I have fun and I try to meet as many people as I can. And when you need advice, one of the best things about this community that we have here at Choice is you can just hop on that Facebook page and then you're going to have 10 answers to any question, or you're going to have people putting their phone numbers in where you can reach out. And so we're all here to help each other out. And, if you find your small group and you want to do those masterminds, do it. I keep wanting to go to Apex. I know they do those masterminds on Wednesday. I have it on my calendar. I just need to plan it weeks out because I'm so crazy that I have everything planned out, several weeks in advance usually. But go to those types of things because I'm planning on doing it.
Yeah, we are not alone. Just show up. We would love, if you don't know anything about us, I hope you will know that we love being y'all's cheerleaders. And so we love spending time with you. We love getting to know you personally, and we'd love to see your face. Rocio mentioned she may have missed this since she stepped away earlier, but how do you handle buyer agency agreements and showings with internet leads? We did handle that. I'll make sure to put like a minute marker when the recording goes out. Marissa asked, do you do anything with Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok? And let's finish on that one.
So if I didn't have to use social media, I would not be on it at all. I don't like it. I think it's bad for our society. I think it does nothing but pull people apart instead of bringing people together. I think there's just a lot of unhealthiness in all of social media, in addition to just the 30 seconds that we're so used to seeing. There's a lot of studies now being done on this, especially for our youth. But I do want people to know that I am in business. So if you follow me on social media, it's going to be gardening, cats, and real estate. And that's about it. I mean, I don't like sharing my personal life out on social media. I'll be very honest with you. When I first got on social media, all my friends in California joked that I didn't really have any children. I only had a dog. And that's just because I value my privacy and I don't need my life to be out for the world to see, and I don't want to live my life that way. So that's just sort of me personally. I know lots of agents live their lives on social media and I have no judgment. That's just not for me. But anybody that does follow me on social media, they know I sell a lot of houses.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be social media. It could be mailers. It doesn't really
Right.
matter what the avenue is, but just showing people that you're in the business. And if it's been a minute since you've had business of your own, reach out to people that have active listings and feel free to, see if they're open to you sharing a few listings that we have, or send out a mailer that says, "Are you looking for a home valuation?" Right? Unfortunately, we've said it before, but like busy equals successful in so many people's eyes. And so just reminding them, it's not that they want to work with other people. To Allison's point, they just got a short attention span. So give
Right.
them a minute to
Or
remember.
just take a quick video of the houses you show. I mean, that's one thing that I'm trying to be more intentional about doing more video because I can see, that I get more interaction on the videos and my hat's off to Ellie Schroed for everything that she does, and she's very successful with it. And I try a little bit to do it, but it's just not my comfort zone. And I think that one of the biggest things that we can be in this business is be ourselves. Be true to who you are. And when you try to deviate away from that, I think people can tell. And then people will sort of start to distance themselves because then you're not authentic. Be authentically who you are, whoever that is.
No one can beat you. Well, Allison, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge. Thank you to all of you for showing up and spending your morning with us. We love these
Yes.
types of sessions.
Thank
If you
you.
have any questions for Allison, feel free to send them my way. I'll make sure they get to her. But thank you to everyone. We appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Allison, thank you so
Yeah.
much again.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
And you can text me anytime.
I'll include Allison's contact info when the recording goes out. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.